"Ma'am, deliveries go around the back," the doorman said flatly, blocking her with his arm as she stepped toward the glass double doors of the Sterling Grand Hotel. Vanessa Price stopped in her tracks, confused at first until she saw the look in his eyes, dismissive, certain. The kind of look that said he'd already made up his mind about her. She wore a charcoal gray wrap dress, minimal makeup, and low heels. Her natural curls were pulled back into a sleek bun. She looked elegant, composed, professional. But to him, she looked like someone who didn't belong. "I'm not here for a delivery," she said calmly. "I have a reservation." He scoffed, barely hiding his disbelief. "Of course you'll want to check with reception, but please use the side entrance." He gestured toward a side corridor where hotel staff and delivery workers usually entered. Vanessa blinked, stunned but composed. "No, thank you. I'll enter through the main lobby just like any other guest." Before he could respond, she walked past him. Inside, the opulence of the Sterling Grand hit her immediately polished marble floors, gold-accented railings, floor-to-ceiling windows. A grand chandelier glittered above a sprawling cream-colored lounge area. Guests milled around, some in evening wear, others dressed casually but clearly affluent. A couple in designer luggage was immediately approached by a concierge offering glasses of complimentary champagne. Vanessa stepped up to the front desk only to be ignored. Two receptionists whispered to each other, glancing her way without acknowledgement. Finally, one sighed and approached her, smile more performative than polite. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyes already scanning the next guest in line. "Yes, I'm checking in. Vanessa Price." The receptionist tapped on her keyboard, lips pursed. "I don't see anything under that name. Are you sure the reservation is for today?" "Yes," Vanessa replied calmly. "The reservation was made under my name." The woman frowned. "Are you sure you're at the right hotel? That landed heavier than it should have." Vanessa exhaled slowly. "Can I speak with your manager?" The receptionist stiffened. "About what exactly?" "About the reservation you can't find and the service I'm not receiving." Before the woman could reply, a middle-aged man in a dark suit approached. His name tag read, Bryce, front office manager. His tone was syrupy with condescension. "Is there a problem here?" "Apparently there is," Vanessa said. "Your staff can't locate my reservation and I'm being redirected like I don't belong here." Bryce looked her up and down quickly. "What's the name again?" "Vanessa Price." He typed his fingers, moving slower than necessary. Then he smirked. "I'm afraid I don't see anything here. Are you with a vendor group? Maybe a speaker for one of the conferences? We've had a lot of events this week." "No?" She said, "I'm not a speaker, and I'm not here for an event. I have business with this property." Bryce tilted his head. "Well, unless you can provide a confirmation number, I'm afraid there's not much I can do. Perhaps if you call the person who booked it, I am the person who booked it." Pause. Then a low chuckle from the other receptionist nearby, as if the idea of someone like her handling high-end bookings was absurd. "Look," Bryce said, now slightly annoyed. "We're at full capacity. If you're here to make a complaint or speak with hotel leadership, you'll need to schedule that through the operations office. You can take a seat in the back lounge while you wait. Service staff usually go there before meetings." That was the final crack in the surface. Vanessa didn't flinch. She simply stepped back, pulled out her phone, and dialed her assistant. "Hi, Grace. Yes, I'm at the Sterling Grand. Please confirm that legal has already signed the acquisition paperwork. I want the documents ready immediately." Bryce raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" She ignored him. Also, can you notify the equity team that I'll need to meet with internal HR tomorrow about their front-of-house culture? Bryce's demeanor shifted from smug to uncertain. What exactly is this about, he asked suddenly on the defensive. Vanessa finally met his gaze, steady and unwavering. You'll find out in 10 minutes. Then she walked away from the desk heels, clicking deliberately as she took a seat in the middle of the grand lounge. Every move she made from that moment forward was calculated, controlled, watching the same employees who had just dismissed her now whisper nervously, throwing glances in her direction. The doorman, now realizing something was off, stood straighter. A bellhop stopped mid-conversation. The couple who had been sipping champagne at check-in. They turned, too, sensing a shift in the air, and for the first time since she walked through those glass doors, Vanessa wasn't invisible. She was the storm they didn't see coming. Vanessa sat alone in the grand lounge of the Sterling Grand Hotel. Her legs crossed neatly, her phone resting in her lap. Her posture composed like someone used to waiting, but not used to being dismissed. Around her, the lobby hummed with low conversation, clinking glasses, and the gentle echo of footsteps on polished marble. The same receptionist who barely looked her in the eye was now speaking warmly to a white couple at the front desk, offering them an upgrade. The same doorman who blocked her entrance minutes ago now held the door open with practiced elegance for a man in golf attire. No one offered her water. No one asked if she needed help. No one approached, and that silence said everything. Vanessa glanced down at her phone as a message came through. Confirmation sent, acquisition finalized, legal on standby. She responded with a simple, "Thank you," before locking the screen and tucking the phone back into her blazer pocket. Then she looked up, watching, not glaring, but observing. People like her weren't supposed to sit in that part of the hotel unless they were invited. She didn't need anyone to say it. It was clear in every glance, every whisper. The general manager still hadn't come down. Instead, Bryce returned this time without the smugness, but still no apology. "I just wanted to follow up," he said carefully, his voice quieter now. "You mentioned something about a business arrangement with the property. Could you clarify that?" "For me?" Vanessa turned her head toward him slowly. "You weren't interested in clarifications 5 minutes ago." He shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, sometimes these things get lost in communication. We just like to ensure security is tight." Security. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Do I look like a threat to you?" "I didn't mean it that way." "No?" she said, voice calm and sharp as glass. "You meant it exactly that way." He stood in awkward silence as she continued. "I asked to speak with the general manager. I assume he's still in the building." Bryce hesitated. "He's in a meeting right now. I can schedule something for." "Now," she said, her voice soft but final. "I'm afraid that's not." Vanessa stood. "If you're afraid, it should be of the position you're about to lose." That stopped him cold. The composure in her face, the weight behind her tone. It was no longer the posture of someone trying to check into a room. It was the posture of someone who owned rooms like this. "Excuse me, ma'am," a guest nearby said gently, a woman in her 50s who had overheard the exchange. "Are you okay?" Vanessa gave her a faint smile. "I'm perfectly fine, but thank you for asking. You're the first person who has." The woman gave Bryce a look of quiet disgust before turning back to her tea. Bryce stepped back. "Let me go speak with someone." "You do that?" Vanessa replied, already lowering herself back into her seat. Across the lobby, the doorman stood near a bellhop, whispering. A young concierge tried to look busy while sneaking glances at her. It was that familiar scramble, The energy of people realizing they'd misjudged someone and weren't sure how to recover. 10 more minutes passed. Still no general manager. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement of the mistake. Vanessa sent one more message. "Bring the documents to the front. I want them in hand." A moment later, a tall black woman in a navy pantsuit walked through the doors carrying a slim leather folder. She made a beeline toward Vanessa's heels, clicking briskly. The two exchanged a nod. The assistant handed her the folder, whispered something brief, and walked back out without fanfare. The entire lobby saw it. Bryce returned this time with a nervous chuckle and a weaker posture. "Miss Price, we're terribly sorry about the confusion earlier. I spoke with our operations team, and Vanessa didn't look up from the document she was flipping through. You're late, I understand. I just wanted to make sure." She snapped the folder shut, stood, and finally looked him in the eye. "You didn't want to make sure, you wanted to make me small." Bryce opened his mouth. No words came out. Vanessa tilted her head. "You know what the worst part is? You didn't even realize who I was. And the truth is, that shouldn't have mattered. I shouldn't have to be someone important for you to treat me like someone who matters." There was a beat of silence. She continued. 10 minutes ago, I asked for the general manager. You ignored me. You assumed I was lying. You offered me the service lounge like I was a delivery. More employees had started to gather near the front desk. Now the energy was different. The whispers had turned to stillness. Bryce swallowed. "I'm deeply sorry." Vanessa took a slow breath. "You're going to be even sorrier in about 60 seconds. Right on cue, the doors opened again. A sharply dressed man in his 60s stepped inside, flanked by 2 legal aides and a woman in a blazer with a clipboard. The ownership transfer team. Bryce turned pale. Vanessa didn't even need to speak. She simply turned, slightly nodded at the team, then turned back to Bryce. "You may want to let your staff know," she said quietly. "As of this moment, this hotel has a new owner." The marble floor seemed to echo louder than usual as the ownership transition team walked into the lobby of the Sterling Grand Hotel. The man in the center, a sharply dressed executive with silver hair and a navy suit, carried a slim black briefcase in one hand and an expression of focused efficiency. At his side was a woman in a slate-gray blazer, her tablet already open, and another aide quietly coordinating something into a Bluetooth earpiece. They didn't look confused. They didn't hesitate. They moved with the unmistakable precision of people who had done this before, people who weren't here to explain, but to act. Every head in the lobby turned. The clinking of wine glasses stopped. The front desk staff, now huddled behind their computers, straightened up. Bryce. The manager, who had moments ago dismissed Vanessa, looked like he'd just seen the ghost of his own job security. Vanessa didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't even have to move quickly. She walked slowly across the polished floor, the sound of her steps drawing every eye as if they were part of a soundtrack. She reached the center of the lobby and faced Bryce, who instinctively stepped back as though trying to physically distance himself from the consequences catching up to him. "This," Vanessa said gently. Tapping the folder now in her hand, is the formal confirmation of acquisition. Effective today, the Sterling Grand is now fully owned by VP Holdings. The color drained from Bryce's face. VP Holdings. "That's Vanessa Price," she said, "as in my name, as in me." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again. There must have been no one told me." "You mean, no one told you to treat people with basic respect unless they carry a recognizable name or walk in with an entourage?" Her voice remained calm, almost cold. "That's on you." The woman in the blazer stepped forward, handing Vanessa a printed statement of transfer and an envelope. Vanessa took it, then turned to address the room. Not just Bryce, not just the desk staff, but the entire lobby. "Let me be clear. I didn't come here to cause a scene. I came here because I believed in this property's potential. I kept this inspection unannounced on purpose, because I wanted to see how this place truly treats people, especially those you assume don't belong." A quiet gasp came from somewhere near the back. The young couple who had been sipping champagne earlier now looked visibly uncomfortable. A middle-aged man at the concierge desk stepped aside, avoiding her gaze, and what I saw, Vanessa continued, was a team that prioritized assumption over hospitality, image over integrity. Bryce tried to interject, but she held up a hand, graceful, firm. "Don't I've heard enough." The senior executive from the acquisition team turned to Bryce. "You'll need to accompany us to HR. Effective? Immediately your access to operational systems will be revoked. Your employment status is now under review." Bryce looked stunned. "You're firing me." Just like that. Vanessa turned toward him, voice still soft. "You're not being fired for one mistake. You're being held accountable for a culture you've nurtured. A culture that treats black women like staff, not guests, that assumes professional must come in a certain package, that sees difference as disruption." He looked down. For the first time since she walked into the hotel, Bryce had nothing left to say. Vanessa took one more look around. "This lobby is beautiful," she said, her voice carrying just enough for everyone to hear. "But all the gold and glass in the world can't cover up a cracked foundation. And I plan to rebuild it." The staff stood silent, processing what they had just witnessed. Some looked embarrassed, others quietly relieved. One young concierge, no older than 24, mouthed the words "thank you" under her breath. Vanessa gave her the faintest nod. A woman in a red pantsuit, one of the guests watching from the lounge area, slowly started clapping. It wasn't loud, it wasn't theatrical, but it was real. A few others joined in, not a standing ovation, but something even more powerful: acknowledgement. Vanessa didn't smile. She didn't need to. She walked toward the front desk where the same receptionist who had doubted her now stood frozen. Vanessa paused. "I suggest you start treating every single person who walks through these doors like they might own the place," she said quietly. "Because next time, they just might." Then she turned and walked behind the desk, not as a guest, but as the owner. In that moment, the Sterling Grand no longer belonged to its reputation. It belonged to its future. And that future had just arrived. The days following Vanessa's bold move to take control of the Sterling Grand were filled with both tension and anticipation. The dust had settled, but the consequences were just beginning. The first action Vanessa took was to call a meeting with the entire hotel staff management service teams, security front desk personnel, and even the housekeeping staff. She knew that true change wouldn't come from just top-down decisions. It would come from the ground up. Everyone had to understand the vision, the mission, and the values they were being asked to uphold. In the first meeting, Vanessa stood before a crowded room of employees, some excited, some apprehensive, and others visibly uncomfortable. She began with a calm and firm statement. "This isn't about me or my acquisition. This is about this hotel's legacy. the legacy we will create together, built on respect, fairness, and inclusion for everyone who walks through these doors. Her words were measured yet packed with the authority of someone who knew exactly what needed to change. I didn't come here to just run a business. I came here to build a culture, and that culture begins with how we treat each other and our guests. She looked out at the room, her eyes scanning the faces of employees who had been there for years. Some looked uncertain, others guilty, and a few were already nodding in agreement. I know this is a big shift, and change can be difficult, she said, but it's necessary. We cannot continue in a culture where judgment is based on appearances or assumptions, where people are treated differently because of their race, their income, or how they walk through the door. There was a pause as Vanessa allowed the weight of her words to sink in. This hotel will stand for something more than luxury. It will stand for dignity, for fairness, and for respect. The room was silent for a few moments before one of the senior managers spoke up, his voice hesitant but earnest. But Vanessa, we've been doing things the same way for years. Why change now? Because Vanessa replied, her voice steady, doing things the same way is why we're in this situation now. It's why I had to step in. She continued. We've had guests who've been treated like second-class citizens, employees who've been belittled, and a system that's failed to value people for who they are. That ends now. The change wasn't easy. Some of the staff, particularly those who had been with the hotel for years, resisted. They felt it wasn't broken and wondered why it had to change. But Vanessa was persistent. She immediately ordered a series of mandatory training sessions for all staff. They would cover everything from equity and inclusion to emotional intelligence and customer service. Vanessa made it clear that everyone from the most senior manager to the lowest level staff would be required to participate. She knew it wouldn't be enough just to talk about the problem. She needed to show everyone that she was committed to this change. Vanessa didn't stay in her office behind closed doors. She walked the halls, introduced herself to every employee she passed, and made sure she personally thanked those who were doing the hard work of improving the hotel's culture. She was there at 6 a.m. before the morning rush and stayed late after the last guest had checked out. She wasn't just an owner. She was a leader, setting the example for how things needed to be done. The hotel's internal processes were reworked to ensure that issues like racial profiling, discrimination, or mistreatment of guests were reported, investigated, and corrected immediately. Vanessa personally oversaw the implementation of a guest feedback system that would be anonymous, but which would also ensure that each complaint was taken seriously. We're not just here to make money, Vanessa explained in one of her meetings with the management team. We're here to serve our community. If we can't do that with integrity and honesty, we're no different than the corporations we so often criticize. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the hotel. Guests were starting to notice it too. One woman, a regular guest at the hotel, commented on how she had been treated with more warmth by the staff than she ever had before. It's like the whole place has a new energy, she said, smiling at the front desk staff. I don't know what you did, but it's working. But the change wasn't just about improved customer service. It was also about the employees themselves. For the first time, the staff felt valued not just as workers, but as people. Vanessa had made it clear that their well-being mattered just as much as the hotel's reputation. You're not just cogs in a machine, she told them in one of her weekly briefings. You're the heart of this place. Without you, we don't have anything. Not everyone was convinced right away. Bryce, the former general manager who had been let go following the incident, still clung to the idea that his way of running the hotel was the right way. But as the weeks passed, the results spoke for themselves. Employee morale improved, complaints dropped, and guests began returning, drawn not just by the luxury of the hotel, but by the welcoming, inclusive environment that Vanessa had instilled. It wasn't just the employees who were affected by the shift in culture. Other businesses in the area began taking notice. Vanessa received messages from fellow business owners asking about her approach. Some of them expressed interest in implementing similar changes in their own companies. They had seen how the Sterling Grand had been transformed, how what had once been a place of exclusion was becoming a beacon of respect and opportunity. Vanessa took calls from other CEOs offering advice and insights on how to create inclusive environments. She was asked to speak at industry events, sharing her story of how she turned around a hotel that had, in many ways, failed the very people it was meant to serve. She spoke candidly about the challenges, but also the rewards that came with making tough decisions. Leadership isn't about being popular, she said in one of her talks. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. The Sterling Grand Hotel was no longer just a luxury destination. It had become a symbol of change, not only in the hospitality industry, but in how businesses could foster inclusion, respect, and fairness. Vanessa had rebuilt the hotel's culture from the ground up, and in doing so, had created a legacy far more valuable than any gold chandelier or marble floor. She had created a place where every guest, every employee, and every person who walked through those doors could feel seen, heard, and valued. With each passing day, Vanessa noticed the subtle yet undeniable changes within the Sterling Grand Hotel. The staff, no longer merely completing their tasks, mechanically began to understand that their work held meaning, not just for the hotel, but for the community they served. 1 week after Vanessa implemented the major changes to the hotel's training and company culture, a regular guest commented on how the hotel seemed to have found itself again, restoring its core values. Employees didn't just smile out of courtesy anymore. They offered genuine kindness. Guests could feel the difference from the moment they walked in. One loyal guest, Mrs. Linda, a woman in her 60s who frequently stayed at the hotel, remarked on the noticeable shift in service. It's a huge difference, she shared while waiting for her luggage. I feel welcomed, like an important guest, not just someone who brings in revenue. I've been here many times before, but this time it feels like home. For Vanessa, that was the clearest sign that the changes were not just theoretical, but had begun to manifest in the daily actions of the staff. They no longer saw their jobs as mere tasks. They saw themselves as vital parts of something greater, something rooted in humanity. A customer satisfaction survey was conducted asking employees to rate their job satisfaction and the change in workplace culture. The results showed a significant improvement in employee morale, with satisfaction increasing dramatically in just the first 2 weeks. Positive feedback confirmed that employees were beginning to trust Vanessa's leadership and the hotel's future. They no longer felt ignored or mistreated. They felt valued. This wasn't just reflected in the employees' attitudes. It also showed in the increase of new customers. While returning customers were certainly pleased with the changes, it was the newcomers that truly stood out. A guest shared on social media that he chose Sterling Grand because he'd heard about the cultural shift and how the staff treated each other and their guests. I've never seen a place where both the front desk and security greet you with a genuine smile. It's not just politeness, it's a true welcome. He wrote in his review, Vanessa didn't just rely on customer feedback. She also wanted her employees and guests to see the changes for themselves. She launched a Share a Customer Story program where employees were encouraged to share positive stories from their work. These stories were shared during team meetings and displayed on the hotel's bulletin boards. One story that stood out was about Maria, a housekeeper who had helped a family with a young child feel more comfortable. Maria took the time to sit with the child, calming him down when he was upset from being cooped up in the room too long. This story wasn't about a grand gesture, but about the human connection that defined great service. Her small act of kindness set a new standard. This story spread quickly, creating a ripple effect. Other employees, from receptionists to security from the restaurant to the back office, began to realize that every action they took could make a difference. They no longer just did their jobs to get them done. They did them because they understood the impact their actions had on people. Once they realized this, they became more engaged, working with greater purpose, because they knew that respect wasn't just for the clients they served, it was for themselves too. In a meeting later on, Vanessa shared, "We don't just serve guests, we serve ourselves. Each of you here has value, and each of you plays a part in building this hotel." Her words became the rallying cry for the ongoing culture shift. By the end of the month, Sterling Grand was no longer just a luxury destination. It had become a symbol of respect, fairness, and sustainable growth. Not only were guests satisfied, but employees also felt pride in their work. The hotel was now not only a place for luxury, it was a place where everyone felt seen and valued. A month had passed since the changes began at the Sterling Grand Hotel, and Vanessa knew it was time to deliver the final message that would solidify the hotel's new culture. The staff had embraced the shift, but it was important to remind them of the values they were building and how those values would guide their future. Vanessa called for a final all-staff meeting. The energy in the room was different this time. There was no uncertainty, only anticipation. Vanessa stood in front of the staff, her presence calm, yet powerful. "We've made significant progress," she began. "But the real change isn't in the hotel's appearance or the systems we've put in place. The real change is in how we treat each other. It's in how we treat people." She paused, making sure her words landed. Every person who walks through those doors, whether they're a guest or an employee, deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. We're not here just to offer a service. We're here to create an experience where people feel like they belong. That's our mission. Vanessa glanced around the room, locking eyes with several employees. She could see that they were starting to truly understand what the hotel stood for. This hotel wasn't meant to be just another luxury destination. It's meant to be a place where everyone feels valued. And we can only make that happen if we make respect our core value. The room fell silent, but this time, the silence was full of understanding. Vanessa continued, "Leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about leading with integrity. It's about making decisions that reflect the values we've set in motion. Every single one of you plays a part in this. From the front desk to the back office, we all have a responsibility to make this hotel a place where everyone feels like they belong." Vanessa's voice softened. "I'm proud of the changes we've made. But the real test is how we move forward. We must continue to lead with kindness and respect. This is just the beginning." She finished with one final thought. "The legacy of Sterling Grand won't be defined by luxury, but by how we treat people. Let's keep making this a place where everyone matters." With that, the meeting ended. not with applause, but with a collective understanding that the journey toward a truly inclusive culture had only just begun. Vanessa's story reminds us that true leadership isn't about power or position. It's about respecting others, valuing their humanity, and creating an environment where everyone feels seen and heard. Whether in the workplace or our personal lives, making kindness and respect the foundation of our interactions can transform any space into a place of true connection and growth. If you found this story inspiring and believe in the power of respect and leadership, don't forget to like this video, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that challenge the status quo and inspire change. Together, let's make a difference, one story at a time.